I never thought I'd be that person. The one who gets used by their own family, chewed up and spit out, all while smiling and handing over my hard-earned money like a fool. But I was, for years, and I never questioned it, until the night my sister, Emma, accidentally called me. It was late, around 11 p.m., and I had just finished a brutal shift at work. My phone buzzed. Emma's name flashed on the screen. Weird. She never called me this late. I answered groggily, "Hello," but there was no response. Just muffled voices, laughter, and the distinct clinking of glasses. A party? My family didn't usually invite me to those. In fact, they didn't invite me to much of anything. I almost hung up until I heard my name. God, can you believe Olivia still thinks she's helping us? That was my mother's voice. Sharp, amused, dripping with condescension. Emma snorted. She acts like some kind of saint. Like we'd be homeless without her. More laughter. Well, technically, we would. My brother, Jake, chimed in. But that's her job. She owes us. She doesn't have kids, no husband, nothing. What else is she gonna do with her money? I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Owes them. Oh, please, my mom scoffed. She doesn't pay out of the kindness of her heart. She pays because we made her. What else was she gonna do? Let her family struggle. She said it like the very idea was disgusting. That's why we should ask for more, Emma said casually. She just got a raise, right? She can afford it. Jake let out a low whistle. Luxury apartment, new car, vacations, she's doing fine. Meanwhile, we're here counting pennies for the new iPhone. Exactly, Emma huffed. She's so selfish. If she really cared, she'd cover more than just rent. Like, the groceries, the utilities, mom's spa days. I felt my stomach turn. My rent payments weren't covering necessities. They were funding their luxury, their entitlement. I wanted to hang up. I wanted to scream. But I didn't. I sat there, gripping my phone so tightly my fingers ached, listening as my entire family, people I had sacrificed so much for, tore me apart like I was nothing. My mother sighed dramatically. I mean, what else can she do? Stop paying? Huh. She's not that heartless. Laughter erupted. I clenched my jaw, my blood boiling. They thought I was trapped. They thought I needed them. They thought I'd never, ever pull the plug. They had no idea what was coming. I sat there, phone still pressed against my ear, my heartbeat pounding in my skull like a war drum. The call was still going. They hadn't realized. They had no idea I was listening. Emma let out a sharp laugh, the kind that always made me feel like I was the punchline of a joke I didn't understand. God, you remember when she actually thought she could say no? That one time. Jake snorted. Oh yeah. What was it, like 2 years ago? She tried to set boundaries or some crap. My mother made a noise of pure amusement. And look how fast she folded. One little guilt trip and she was begging to help again. Emma sighed dramatically. She's too soft. Too afraid of being the bad guy. That's why we always win. Something inside me twisted, hard, and violent. When? This wasn't a family helping each other out. This was a game to them. A power trip. They were playing with me, laughing behind my back, while I bled myself dry for them. Jake's voice turned smug. She's so predictable. She thinks if she just keeps paying, we'll appreciate her. Like, sure, okay, thanks for the rent money, but that doesn't mean we have to like her. I didn't realize I was gripping my phone so hard until my fingers started to cramp. Emma's voice turned syrupy. I mean, she could be more fun, you know? Like, we're family. But no, she's all work, work, work. No personality. No social life. Just money. My mother hummed in agreement. At least she's useful for something. That was it. That was the moment something in me snapped. But I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I kept my grip on the phone, held my tongue, and listened. Because if they thought I was weak, if they thought I was predictable, then I'd give them exactly what they expected. For now. Anyway, my mother continued, her voice turning breezy. We need to have a talk with her soon. The rent's going up next month. She'll have to cover the difference. Jake groaned. Ugh, she's gonna make that face again. The one where she pretends to be struggling, like, oh no, I can't afford it. His voice pitched into a mock whine. Emma cackled. She can afford it. She just doesn't want to. Exactly. My mother's voice hardened. She needs to understand. We have needs, too. Needs. Needs. They weren't talking about food, electricity, medical bills. No, they were talking about the things they chose to spend their money on instead of rent. Emma clicked her tongue. You know, she's been really slow with payments lately. Maybe we should start reminding her earlier. Jake laughed. Yeah, let's do that. Maybe even throw in a little, we're struggling story for extra effect. Oh, and Mom, Emma added, you should cry again. It works every time. My mother chuckled, and I felt something cold, visceral, coil in my stomach. Of course, sweetheart. I know exactly what to say. I sat in silence, staring at the floor, my entire world tilting under me. They were proud of it, of manipulating me, of wringing me dry and then mocking me behind my back. And they thought they could keep doing it. They thought I'd never stop. I swallowed, forcing my voice to stay even, calm. Then, finally, I spoke. Hello. The call went silent. The silence that followed was deafening. I stared at my phone, the screen now dark, my thumb hovering over the call log as if I needed proof it had actually happened. They hung up the second they heard my voice. Not a single word. No excuse, no cover-up, nothing. Just clicked. I imagined them all, sitting in my mother's overpriced living room, their laughter choking in their throats as the reality sank in. She heard us. And yet, my phone stayed silent. No frantic call back from Emma. No fake apology from my mother. No hastily typed out excuses from Jake. Nothing. Because they weren't sorry. They were just caught. I took a slow, deep breath, my hands shaking as I set my phone down on the table. My mind was racing, replaying every word, every smug little jab, every way they had picked me apart like I was nothing more than an ATM with a pulse. But I didn't cry. Not this time. I sat there, perfectly still, my fingers tapping against the table as a plan started to form. They thought they had me figured out. They thought I'd stay quiet, pretend nothing happened, keep paying their bills like a good little doormat. But they had no idea. I could already picture it, their faces when the next rent payment didn't arrive. The panic, the outrage, the audacity they'd have to act like I was the one betraying them. But not yet. I wasn't going to cut them off immediately. No, that would be too easy, too predictable. If they wanted to believe I was weak, if they thought they still had control over me, then I'd let them think that. For now, I picked up my phone, scrolling through our family group chat. It was mostly them asking for money in one way or another. Mom's medical excuse of the month, Emma's emergency spa day, Jake's sudden car trouble that never seemed to end. I typed out a simple message. Hey, sorry, my phone glitched and dropped the call. Everything okay? I hit send. Seconds later, the typing bubble appeared. Emma texted, oh haha yeah, just bad signal. We weren't even talking about anything important lol. Liar. I stared at the screen, watching the dots flicker as she hesitated, probably wondering if I had heard anything. If I knew. Emma texted, anyway, Mom wanted to talk to you soon. Maybe this weekend? I smiled. There it was. The setup. They were already laying the groundwork for their next demand. I cracked my knuckles, my pulse steady, my mind clear. This weekend? Fine. I'd play along. And when the time was right, when they were at their most desperate, when the rent was due, I'd pull the rug out from under them so hard they wouldn't know what hit them. Let's see how they handled life without their little burden paying their way. The weekend came faster than I expected. I spent the next few days going through the motions, answering their messages like nothing had changed, letting them believe I was still oblivious. Emma texted me the most, sending casual updates about her stressful life, her new manicure, a shopping spree, a dinner at some high-end restaurant. Jake mostly stuck to short messages, acting like we were close just in case he needed to ask for something later. And Mom? She played her role perfectly. Mom, hey sweetheart, hope you're doing okay. Just wanted to check in. Love you. The kind of message that used to make me feel guilty for even thinking of saying no to them. But now it was just part of the game. They were so predictable, it almost made me laugh. Saturday finally rolled around, and I made my way over to Mom's house. Or, more accurately, the house I had been paying for. The moment I pulled up, I felt it, the twisted mix of nerves and excitement coiling in my chest. I wasn't here to fight. Not yet. I was here to watch, to see how they planned to manipulate me this time. I stepped inside without knocking, something they expected from me. Something that made them feel like I was still part of this little toxic mess of a family. The smell of expensive candles and takeout filled the air. Mom was sitting on the couch, wrapped in some overpriced blanket, a cup of tea in her hands like she was preparing for a serious discussion. Emma lounged across from her, lazily scrolling on her phone, and Jake sat at the kitchen counter, munching on something that looked suspiciously expensive for someone who couldn't afford rent. They have no idea. Mom looked up, giving me the kind of warm smile that used to make me feel safe. The same smile she probably used right before she planned to wring more money out of me. "There you are, sweetheart," she said, voice soft. "We were just talking about you." "I bet you were." I smiled back, keeping my expression easy, relaxed. "Oh yeah? What about?" Mom sighed dramatically, setting her tea down. "Well, you know how much we appreciate everything you do for this family. You've been such a blessing, helping out with rent and all." "Here it comes." Emma chimed in, her tone carefully casual. "Yeah, like, we were actually just talking about how much rent has gone up lately. It's crazy." Jake let out a low whistle. "Insane. Like, I don't even know how people are affording it." Mom nodded, her eyes wide with exaggerated concern. "And, well, we wanted to talk to you about that. The landlord is raising the rent again. It's really bad this time." I tilted my head, pretending to think. "Oh wow. By how much?" Mom hesitated, just for a second. "A few $100s more a month." Emma immediately jumped in. "Which, isn't that bad, but with all the bills, it's just so much, We're barely keeping up." Jake sighed, running a hand through his hair. "And we hate to ask, but there it is." The ask. The moment where they expected me to smile, nod, and say, "Of course, I'll help." I leaned back, pretending to think it over, like I was actually considering it. "Let them squirm." Mom leaned forward, her voice soft, full of fake concern. "Sweetheart, we wouldn't ask if we weren't really struggling." Emma sighed dramatically. "Like, I've had to cut back on so many things." "Cut back?" She had just posted about buying a new designer bag yesterday. Jake shook his head, playing the role of the stressed-out brother. "We're just lucky to have you, Not everyone has a sibling who cares this much." I could barely keep the amusement off my face. "They're laying it on so thick." Mom reached out, placing her hand on mine, her voice dipping into that motherly tone she always used to guilt-trip me. "So, sweetheart, can you cover the increase? Just until we figure things out." I let the silence stretch. The air felt thick, the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. They thought they had me, thought I'd fold, just like every other time that I met my mother's eyes, smiling. "Of course," I said. Relief flooded her face so quickly she almost gasped. Emma grinned. "Oh my God, you're the best." Jake clapped me on the shoulder. "Knew we could count on you." I smiled, nodding along, playing the role they expected. Because they had no idea. No idea that in just a few weeks, when the rent was actually due, they'd wake up to an eviction notice instead of my money that I wasn't helping them anymore. I was about to watch their whole world collapse. And I couldn't wait. The days after that conversation were like a game of waiting. Every time they texted me, I smiled, laughed at their jokes, and sent a few meaningless responses to keep the act going. They had no idea what I was planning. I kept my distance, careful to avoid making it seem like I was pulling away too quickly. They'd just accuse me of being distant, of changing, and I wasn't about to give them any ammo. Each day, I went through the motions, pretending like nothing had shifted in my head, even though everything inside me was screaming to pull the plug already. I wanted to do it right away, but I had to make sure I was in control. This wasn't just about getting back at them. It was about teaching them a lesson they'd never forget. They still expected me to be there when they needed me. They still expected me to be their safety net, the one they could count on when their spending habits caught up with them. The truth was, they could have easily afforded rent without my help. They were just so used to living beyond their means that they thought they were entitled to everything I'd been giving them. They didn't need my money. They wanted it. And that was the line I'd finally drawn in the sand. It was only a week before the next rent payment was due when I got the call that I was sitting at my kitchen table, scrolling through some work emails when my phone buzzed. The caller ID made my stomach tighten. Mom. I hesitated for a second, pretending I didn't know exactly what this was about. "Hey, Mom," I answered, trying to keep my voice neutral, even though my heart was pounding. "Oh, thank God you picked up," she said, her voice tight. "Sweetheart, we're in a bit of a jam." "Here it comes. What's going on?" I asked, my tone calm, like I had all the time in the world to listen to whatever excuse she was about to give me. "Well, you know how we were talking about the rent increase," she started, clearly rehearsing what she was about to say. "Well, the landlord is being really unreasonable. He's insisting on the full increase, and we're really struggling here." "Uh-huh." I already knew where this was going. "We're just asking for a little bit of help," she continued, the fake sweetness back in her voice. Just to get us over the hump this month, and then we'll figure things out, okay? I could hear the desperation in her tone. She knew she couldn't pull the wool over my eyes anymore. I stayed silent, letting the tension build. She couldn't possibly believe I'd just roll over and give them another month of my life. Could she? Did she really think I hadn't noticed how their spending had spiraled out of control? So, what do you think, sweetheart? She asked, her voice a little too hopeful that I couldn't hold it in anymore. I let out a slow breath, trying to sound casual. I think you're more than capable of handling this on your own. She was silent for a moment, as if trying to process what I had just said. I could practically hear her brain working overtime, trying to figure out how to fix this. You know I can't just let you guys get evicted, right? I continued, keeping my voice calm. You've got money for things like new furniture, trips, expensive dinners, but you can't seem to save for rent. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Then, slowly, she spoke. Sweetheart, we don't have that kind of money right now. You know it's not that simple. We're really struggling. I kept my voice steady, but the anger was rising. It's only not that simple because you've been living beyond your means for years, Mom. You've been using me as a crutch, and I've had enough. You know that's not true, she said, her voice tightening, trying to cling to the lie. You owe us. You know we've always been there for you, haven't we? I let that one sit for a moment. Yeah, you've always been there, when it was convenient for you. But now I'm done being your ATM. It's time to figure things out on your own. Mom's voice shifted, the facade cracking. Sweetheart, please, we can't. I've already made up my mind. I interrupted, my voice cold. And I won't be paying this month's rent. You'll have to figure it out. Good luck. I hung up before she could respond. I sat there in the stillness, my heart racing. It wasn't a feeling of guilt, though. It was more like the moment before a thunderstorm, when the air is thick with tension and you know something big is coming. I knew they wouldn't take this well. Hell, I was practically daring them to react. But I also knew they had no other option but to beg. That's when the real fun would begin. Over the next few days, my phone was bombarded with messages. Texts from Mom, calls from Dad. Even my sister, who normally didn't get involved in financial drama, had a message waiting for me. Can you please talk? We really need to sort this out. I didn't respond to any of them. In fact, I turned my phone on Do Not Disturb mode and avoided all of it. The longer I could keep them in the dark about the fact that I knew what they'd been saying, the better. I could feel their desperation starting to seep through, and I let it marinate. The day the rent was due came, and sure enough, the calls started up again. First, it was Mom, then Dad, and finally my sister. Each call had a slightly more frantic tone than the last. But I didn't budge. It was around noon when I finally decided it was time for the confrontation. I was sitting at my kitchen table, sipping coffee, when I saw a text from my sister pop up. We really don't have anyone else to turn to. Please, just this one time. I didn't even give it a second thought. I picked up my phone and dialed her number. She answered almost immediately. Oh my God, thank you for picking up. She sounded relieved, like she'd been holding her breath. We're in deep trouble. The landlord said if we don't get the full payment in by tomorrow, he's going to start the eviction process. You know we can't afford this on our own. Please just help us out this one time. I let her ramble on, her voice getting more and more desperate with every word. The guilt was supposed to start creeping in, but all I felt was a strange sense of satisfaction. I'd played this game for too long, letting them take advantage of me, and now it was time for the tables to turn. Finally, I cut her off. You really don't get it, do you? There was a long pause on the other end. What do you mean? I heard everything, I said, my voice cold. I heard the call. I heard all of you laughing at how you've been using me as your personal bank for years. She owes us, you said. She's just a means to an end, right? Her silence was deafening. I could almost hear her brain trying to process what I had just said. Do you think I didn't know? I continued, my voice getting sharper. Do you think I didn't realize how you've been living way beyond your means, all while depending on me to bail you out? You think I'm stupid? That I wouldn't notice how you buy new clothes, take vacations, eat out at expensive restaurants, while I'm over here picking up the tab every damn month. But we needed your help, she finally said, her voice cracking. We couldn't have made it without you. Yeah, well, maybe you should have thought about that before you spent every penny you had on things you didn't need. I shot back. You don't need me. You just wanted me to keep giving you money. And I'm done with it. I'm done being your ATM. I could hear her trying to find words, but nothing came. She had no defense. She was trapped in the very web she'd spun. Then, just when I thought the conversation was over, I heard my mom's voice in the background, yelling at her to get me to help them and not let me off the hook. That's when I decided it was time to make my grand exit. You know what? I said, my voice steady. I'm done. I'm cutting you all off. No more money. No more bailouts. No more being your punching bag. If you want to live like this, you'll have to figure it out on your own. Good luck, though, because once you've spent every penny you've ever earned on luxury, you're going to have a hard time living in the real world. I ended the call before she could respond, turning my phone off completely. Months passed, and I didn't hear a word from my family. I wasn't surprised. They were too proud to admit they'd messed up. But then one day, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my sister with a simple line, "The rent's due again." I didn't respond immediately. I knew what they wanted, money. But that wasn't going to happen. A few days later, I got another text from my mom. "Can you please just help us this one time? We're really struggling." Then, my dad tried calling, but I let it go to voicemail. They weren't asking for a second chance or an apology. They just needed me to be their safety net again. I kept ignoring them. I was done. Their arrogance and entitlement had left a sour taste in my mouth, and no amount of begging would change that. The truth was, they never changed. They were just too used to being taken care of, and when I stopped enabling them, they were forced to face the consequences of their actions. The landlord didn't wait, and eventually, they were evicted. I wasn't there to pick up the pieces, and they didn't get a penny from me. It wasn't pretty, but it was exactly what they needed. Sometimes the best revenge isn't a dramatic showdown. It's just walking away and letting them realize they can't rely on you anymore. And they never did come back.